Good morning. Welcome to Library Time with Miss Pulliam. Today we're going to read a book called Solo. The author is Paul Garrity. Now, can you see why I'm dressed this way this morning? Okay, Solo. In the dark of winter, Flo leapt out of the sea. For days she hiked across the ice. It blew and it snowed. She slid and she stumbled, but she never once stopped to rest. Sometimes she tobogganed. Often she had to climb. She was on her way to meet her mate, Finn. Just as the struggle began to seem endless, Flo's heart quickened. She could hear a great noise in the distance. Up ahead, the horizon was dark with penguins as they gathered in their thousands. The colony grew and grew as more arrived each minute. She was nearly home. Flo bustled through the rookery, calling for Finn. If he'd survived the months at sea, he would be out there somewhere looking for her too. For hours she called. Then far away in the forest of noise, she thought she heard him. She called, then listened. Faintly, his voice echoed back. It was Finn. Flo called again, and Finn replied. She followed the sound she knew so well, and there he was at last. They They bowed and stretched with delight. They touched chests. Finn led Flo on a celebration walk. They were together again. A few weeks later, their voices sang out with pride. Flo had laid her egg. She passed it to Finn. He took it onto his feet, gently covered it from the cold, and prepared for the long, hungry wait. See their egg right there? Again they sang, and then Flo was gone, on the big journey back to the sea to collect food for the baby. At the water's edge, she hesitated. We know hesitated means she stopped, she paused, she took a moment, thought about it. She was desperate to swim, but something made her stop, and then she saw it. What could it be? A leopard seal! Just beneath the ice, ready to snatch her as she dived in. Flo stood still and waited. Eventually, the seal flicked the surface and set off, looking for less careful penguins to hunt. Flo splashed into the clear water and twisted down into the deep. And there's the seal. Back in the rookery, Finn huddled with the other penguins to keep warm. For 3 bitter months he had been without food, and still he protected the egg. Then, one morning, he heard a tapping sound, and slowly the egg began to crack. Finn watched in wonder as the shell broke open, and the baby was born. The first thing baby Solo saw was a winter storm. Flo wasn't back from the sea, so Finn fed her what little oil he had. Excitement grew as the first fat females returned. All around them, other chicks were starting to hatch. At last, Flo arrived. The sight of Finn with baby Solo filled her with joy. She bowed and bumped against Finn. He passed her the baby, and they showed cheeks and sang, and Solo got her first good meal of squid. Ooh. Then, desperate with hunger, Finn set straight off for the sea. It was his turn to collect the food. He splashed with delight. He tumbled and swam. For weeks he dived and he fished. All the rookery, at the rookery, Solo was growing well. Flo had run out of food, but Finn was a good diver. He'd soon be back with plenty of squid, and then she could go fishing again. One morning, Flo and Solo saw dark shapes approaching in the distance, fat, waddling penguins. They could hardly wait, but Finn wasn't among the first ones there. They could only watch as all around them chicks were fed and hungry mothers were finally free to go to the sea. Notice they take turns getting food for their family. Each time more penguins arrived, their spirits rose, but still Finn didn't come. Days passed. Anxiously, they watched as the last few stragglers came home. Perhaps Finn had got lost, or perhaps he'd gone farther than the others to find good food. Solo cried with hunger, but Flo had nothing left to feed her. She was hungry too, and now there were no more shapes in the distance to give them hope. It's kind of sad right now, isn't it? Let's hope it gets better. Flo waited one more day, and when Finn didn't come, she knew she would have to leave her chick or they would both starve. She put Solo on the snow, looked back once, and then hurried off towards the sea. It was a faint hope, but perhaps she could make the trip in time to save her chick. Solo tried to follow, but she couldn't keep up. She waited quietly for a while, but then she cried out from the cold. A few heads turned. Some of the penguins noticed that Solo was on her own. One penguin tried to drag her onto his feet, but another pulled her from behind. A third tugged at her flipper. Suddenly, 5 large penguins were fighting over Solo. They all wanted to care for her, but they tugged and nipped so hard that she cried out with fright. That's nice that they want to help out, take care of the baby. Scurrying away, Solo slid down a crevice. At the bottom, she lay a while, panting with shock. Curious faces peered down at her. At least she was safe from their jabbing beaks. Slowly she recovered and soon had the strength to struggle along the bottom. At one end, the space opened up, and Solo found herself at the edge of the rookery. From there, she set off to find her mother. She hasn't gone far. She hadn't gone far when a skua bird swooped down, knocking Solo to the ground. She cried and tumbled, then a gust of wind blew her down again, bowling her over and over. The wind blew harder. She rolled and slid along the ice. The skua fought the wind, waiting to dive again. Solo called for her mother, but she was far away, still hurrying to the sea. She struggled to her feet and looked back. The rookery was out of sight. How do you think she feels right now? A bitter wind bowled her over again. When they say bowled over, knocked her down, is what they're saying. And this time she didn't get up. She lay on the ice, weak and shivering. The skua landed and settled its wings, ready for an easy meal. It reached forward, nipped at Solo's belly, and began to tug. Solo cried out. And a passing shape stopped. It hobbled over and lunged at the skua. Finn was back. He had finally managed the journey, dragging the fisherman's net the whole way with him. Look at that. Finn is back. And now he can protect his baby. Weeks later, to Finn and Solo's delight, they heard a familiar sound across the icy wastes, a half-hearted call from Flo. At once they both replied, and for a wonderful moment they listened to Flo, getting closer, calling with joy and disbelief. So they struggled a bit, this family, but they got together in the end, and they were still together, and they're healthy and doing well. I hope you enjoyed the book, because I did. Again, this is Solo by Paul Garrity. And I do like penguins. Penguins are so cute. Have a great day.